All right, so I am Dave Hunt. I am the continuous improvement and state and federal programs consultant here at the Muskegon Area ISD. And I'm also on the board of MAS FPS, the Michigan Association of State and Federal Program Supervisors. And we have several members from MAS FPS on today. Appreciate everybody joining, especially my co-hosts, Amber and Melissa. We'll talk a little bit about MAS FPS here in a few minutes, but hopefully if you are in the state and federal programs world, you're already a member. If not, I suggest that you get signed up. So we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But for this first meeting, what I usually like to get into first is just a variety of resources. I know that each year we have people that are new in their positions, or maybe they changed roles. Maybe they haven't been in the positions too long and need some resources to help get them started. So going to go over some general resources that are out there and talk about those a little bit. And then we'll get into the normal part of our meeting where we'll go over some hot topics at the federal, with our federal grants at the federal level, and then also with our state grants. We will have time at the end of our meeting for roundtable. So anything that comes up that anybody wants to talk about, we're welcome to talk about that at the roundtable. And also just wanted to add that we all work together to figure this stuff out. So if I'm talking about something and you know something additional about it, if you have another resource to share, if I'm giving out misinformation, anything like that, please don't hesitate to just bring it up at that moment, just unmute. Or if you have an additional resource to share, just drop it in chat. So we're all working together on this. There's no one person that has all of the knowledge about this at any level of the entire state organization. So this is really about us being able to get together and be able to share what we all know is going on at this time. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and jump into the resources. And wanted to start off and just really talk about the month-by-month checklist. And this is really around continuous improvement. So this was made by a group here in West Michigan that goes into, on a month-by-month basis, what are some of the things that you really could be thinking about for that month? It is not a, you don't have to start at the bottom of the list and work your way, or at the top of the list and work your way to the bottom or anything like that. But as I know that many of us that are in the state and federal programs realm also have crossover into the continuous improvement land. So this is just a few good things to take a look at and think about what's going on this month. Are we, maybe you might be a part of your running your district improvement processes or your school improvement processes. So what are some of those things that in October, for example, what are some of those things that we should really be thinking about in October at the district level? What are some of those things at the building level that we might want to be thinking about for that month? So I just wanted to point out it's here. It's broken down month by month. And again, just to kind of get you pointed in the right direction on some of these things. The next item to take a look at is our state and federal programs compliance calendar. And this again kind of takes things month by month. And this one has more of a focus on our state and federal programs. And so we look in October and we see that this is usually about the time that MDE recommends that we have our annual parent meeting. It's supposed to happen early in the year. And so that's something that could really be happening in October. And then you can also look over and for most of these, there is some sort of written process that goes along with it. And these are all sample written processes from the written processes webpage that I'll talk about here in a few minutes. Also in October, this is when we're in our count period right now. So count days already happened, but we're in that count period where we get about a month to kind of get things straightened out. And this is a good time to be working on our 31A eligibility worksheets, making sure that all of the students that are eligible for 31A are getting marked appropriately for that. So those are a couple of October items. And like I mentioned, there's written processes for think, yeah, there's a written process for everything that's in here. My recommendation for this is to make a copy of this for yourself and then modify it for what works for you. So there might be some things that you're doing in different months that are here that are recommended, or you have additional detail that you want to put in. Maybe you want to put in the actual people's names that are responsible for these different things. You might want to link to your own written processes. So my recommendation for this one is make a copy for yourself and start to edit it and get it set up for you. The last item here under due dates and calendars, the MDE Office of Educational Supports does put out
Officer Jim to
a whole their own calendar. And this one really gets into, if I can blow this up a bit. This is all about the consolidated application and when things are due for the consolidated application. And it does a really great job of taking you through a whole consolidated application cycle and really understanding all the different things that need to happen for the whole year. So I think that it's a little over 4 pages, and it really covers everything you need to know. I like how it's kind of broken out into different phases. So again, if you are new, this is a really great thing to understand what's going on at different parts of the year, when are things coming due for the consolidated application, and it really breaks it down, gives you all the resources that you need for that. So that is it for the due dates and calendars. Wanted to move into a couple of support resources. If you are not already signed up for my monthly communication, I really highly recommend getting signed up for that. This comes out monthly, so I usually send it either right at the beginning of the month or within the first couple of days anyway. But it has all the important dates that are coming up, due dates for different grants, things like that. There's always a section on continuous improvement, and then there's always several items around state and federal programs. So I highly recommend getting in there, and you can subscribe to that. It's right here under subscribe, or that is up. It's right at the top here. And all you need to do is just put your name and email address in, and you'll get subscribed. This is through my ISD, so like there's no advertisements in it. I'm not trying to sell you anything. So just trying to be a good communicator and help everybody out. So I really highly recommend signing up for that newsletter if you haven't done so already. So here is the Written Processes Collaborative. And this, if you've been in state and federal programs for a while, you know, especially if you've been through any fiscal audits, on-site reviews, single point audits, one of the main things that they will be asking for is show me the written process for that. And so this has a full database of dozens, I guess there's over 60 written processes. You can search for them, you can look for them by grant. So it's a searchable database. And each one of them connects to an item or multiple items in the on-site review, district, and school study guides. This one is specifically tied to a program on-site review from the Office of Educational Supports. So everything in here aligns to that. I'll often get questions about, hey, do you have a written process for program audits or for fiscal audits or single point audits? And a lot of these will apply to those, but they're not aligned to them. Same thing with, hey, we're having a 31A audit or we're having an English learner audit. The written process here are aligned to the on-site review. They may be applicable to some of those things, but they're not aligned to the study guides for those. So that's just a kind of a qualifier for the Written Processes Collaborative. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There's a lot that we could talk about with this, but we usually reserve that for some of our offerings through MAS FPS, where we go into more detail about some of those different things. Equitable services. If you are working with federal grants, then you likely need to be working with the private schools in your area to make sure that you're providing equitable services for them. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I do have one item about this under federal topics that we'll talk about later. But I do have a quick start guide here that talks about how to find your private schools and then the sorts of things that you would need to share with them. There's a quick start guide And then there's a very detailed full guide through MAS FPS that was created. If that anybody at any level of experience with equitable services could probably benefit by taking a look at that full guide. For those of you that are new to working with 31A, I do have a quick intro piece about 31A. Just talks about what must be in place, what the purpose of 31A is, that it's supplemental dollars, and some of the things that it can and can't be used for. So just a quick intro to 31A if you are new to working with that grant. And then wanted to talk just a little bit about time and effort. If you have any staff that are funded out of state or federal funds, we really need to be thinking about time and effort. This applies specifically, the legal side of this really applies specifically to federal funds. But if you are getting audits, you will find that the practices work just as well for anybody that's funded under state funds. So basically, we have a little flow chart that you can be used to determine what kind of time and effort is needed. And so you just kind of follow the flow chart through to see, like to answer a question about an individual staff member, and you'll eventually get to an end. Maybe you don't need time and effort. Maybe you need an annual certification. Maybe you need some sort of fixed schedule certification. Maybe you need to use PARs or personnel action reports. So anyway, you kind of follow the flow chart to the end, and then when you click on that, it will give you examples and sample documents to use and stuff like that. So really recommend on an annual basis to take a look at all of your staff that are funded out of state and federal funds and make sure that you are maintaining the correct time and effort for their work. Last item under support resources is the MyKIP collaboration series. We ran this for 4 years. Most recently just finished it up in the spring of 2024. And it is a great resource for everything continuous improvement, everything about MyKIP specifically. So I'll just pop open the most recent one here. The full 4-session series is all here. Videos of everything is here. Presentations for every part of the series is here. And all of the resources that were used for the full series is here. So whether you were brand new and needed MyKIP 101, that's there. If you were a little bit more experienced and really wanted to get more into improvements for it, that's really the next 3 sessions. We also had visitors or special guests at each one that from the field that came in and gave their own presentations, and they were all really great too. So this last year was a really great year for that. We do have a change up for this year. So myself and this team are not going to be running it now. There's a new team that's going to be running it. So keep your eye on the MyKIP continuous communication that comes out from MDE for details on that. So I'm going to pause there. You know what, let's just get through the rest of the resources, then I'll pause for questions or additional information anybody might have. Just want to talk about MAS-FPS real quick. So MAS-FPS is a all volunteer-led statewide organization. It has been in place for well over 50 years. And it's a great organization. Like I said, we have many board members here today. And if you are not a member of that, I really highly recommend going to the MAS-FPS website and signing up. It's just $85 a year. And I'll put the link to the website in here. It's just $85 a year, and it's just really, really worth it. So I did put in our events at a glance. If you are a new director, or even a director in their first couple of years, I really recommend the Directors Workshop Series. It is 11 sessions. They're all virtual. They are all recorded. Everything is shared, and you can see that a few have already passed. But we do have people that register for this throughout the whole year. You can then attend the sessions live and then go back and watch previous sessions. It is everything that you need to know to do well at your job as a state and federal programs director. So that is my highest recommendation for anybody that is new in the position this year. or maybe in your first couple of years. You can see that there are several other learning opportunities, and you can take a look at those too for your own needs. But Director's Workshop, highly recommended for anybody that is newer in their position. We did just have our Fall Professional Learning Institute. So we had our first fall event since before COVID. Seemed to go really well. And we do have our spring event, which is April 24th and 25th at the Crown Plaza. Again, I recommend anybody that's working in state and federal programs attend this conference. This MAS-FPS is really your only opportunity to get together with other people in like positions and network, and also to hear straight from the federal government, straight from the state government, on many, many topics that are imperative to your work. So I can't recommend getting involved in MAS-FPS enough. And I'm not just saying that as a board member and past president. I've been a member of MAS-FPS since 2011, and it's a great organization. So last item that I want to talk about here under resources is the state grants repository. So I'm just going to pop this open real quick. So this is a volunteer effort by a few people across the state. And we keep this maintained with all information about all of our state grants. I just found out that MDE, I've been working with MDE for a couple of years to try to get an official version through MDE of this created, and it's going to happen. So I'm super excited to hand this work over to MDE, and the group that maintains this is going to be meeting with MDE on Friday to give them some feedback before it goes live. So you heard it here first, folks. There's going to be an official MDE version of the state grants repository. So depending on the timeline, I'm not sure if we're going to be updating this with PA 120, which is the School Aid Act that's out right now. In the meantime, there is a list here of all of the grants that are in PA 120, and if they're formula grants or designated grants, things like that. I do a full session on the state grants. We don't have time to go into that today, but I do go have some additional information about that. Could probably add that. Just recently did a presentation around it, and could probably add that information to our agenda as well. So just know that the state grants repository is here. Hopefully we're going to be seeing an official version from MDE coming out very soon. Okay, so I'm going to pause at this time. We have several members from MAS-FPS here. And then also we have several folks from MDE, Office of Education Supports here. So wanted to pause and first just see any folks from MDE, if you wouldn't mind unmuting real quick and just introducing yourself and what your role is at MDE or what region you're representing. If the folks from MDE could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Hi, good morning. Michelle Sandro here. I represent several counties, which kind of goes over your region. So I have Clare Gladwin, Gratiot Isabella, Midland, Bay Aranac, Tuscola, and Iosco counties. So I'm actually in, I think, 3 different regions. So thanks for the opportunity to pop in this morning. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Any other folks from MDE here? All right. So next item before we get into the federal pieces, just wanted to see if there was anybody have any really great resources out there that you rely on that I didn't discuss yet. I'd be glad to add them to the list or hear a little bit more about those. All right, hearing none, we'll pop down into the hot topics then. So I'm going to start off with some federal updates here. Right now, because of several factors with Nexus, the deadline got extended on the consolidated application. A lot of folks waited till the last minute to get their stuff put in because they were having issues on the Nexus side or whatever. There are still the consultants know that there are still a few pieces that we don't have in some districts that are grant funds available. And so the thing that I talked to Shelley Patton this morning, the thing that she wanted us to communicate about with this is that if you don't have grant funds available yet, and you really need something that you feel like you need immediate approval for or anything like that, just be in a good communication with your OES consultant. And while you're waiting for that grant funds to become available, just keep in good communication. If anything changes, if you want pre-approval for something before the amendment time, just stay in good communication. So despite some districts not having grant funds available yet, we are coming up on the amendment window. So right now, it sounds like the calculations are being finalized for that. And from what I heard, and Michelle can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like we are on track to have a normal amendment window. We don't have the dates yet for when the amendment is going to open, but typically those are due on January 15th. There's kind of a couple of triggers for when the amendment window opens. The first one is that the financial unit is kind of goes through and looks at everybody's final expenditure reports and determines what kind of carryover you have. So first they have to figure out how much carryover you have from the previous year. And then the second piece is the federal government issues out our final allocations. And when both of those things are in place, then we can open up the amendment window. Typically that happens in late October or early November. And then we have a couple months to, now that we know the full amount that we're going to get for our federal funds, we have a couple months to do an amendment. So it sounds like that's going to be on track and be at our normal time this year. I want to talk a little bit about on-site reviews. I heard from Shelley Patton this morning that all the regional consultants have already communicated with all the districts about any districts that are having an on-site review this year. So if you have not heard from your regional consultant, then you are likely not having an on-site review this year. That doesn't mean that you won't have a fiscal audit or something else, but you're not going to get an on-site review through the Office of Educational Supports. I also wanted to mention that the school and the district study guides have been updated. So those are updated on the MDE's webpage. They're also updated on the reference portion here. These are the most recent versions of those. If you have worked with those before, they're still almost exactly the same. They have the same amount, the same content is there. The written processes that you may have created will still work for all of those. The updates were mostly in language. So they, since MyKIP came out, they need to go through and update some language. So if you've heard that the Steuben and district study guides have been updated, it's just mostly language updates. So I do have a link to the on-site review webpage here. There's a bunch of resources. If you did get tagged for an on-site review, it is quite an undertaking, but there is a lot of support and resources for that. Make sure you visit the webpage and make sure you're in really good communication with your OES consultant if you did get selected for an on-site review this year. Just want to talk real briefly about comparability. Comparability, there's been some memos that went out. I've heard some conflicting reports on if that went out just to the LEAs that were supposed to get them, if it was accidentally sent to more LEAs. So, but comparability is really if you have overlapping grade levels or a couple other situations. If you're like, I don't know what comparability is, I've never dealt with it, you likely don't have to do it and you don't have to worry about this one. So I did put a link to the MDE's comparability website. They have a really good presentation there that explains what comparability is. And there's some really great help resources that got created in the last few years about how to complete comparability. The thing that I would say is if you get to the end of the process and you did not meet comparability, you really need to reach out to your OES consultant and have them help you figure out what you need to do about that. Sometimes need to do a lot of things. Sometimes you need to make some pretty big structural changes. So if you don't meet comparability, make sure that you reach out to and see how you can work with your consultant to figure that out. I will say that one of the main issues that I see come up with comparability is that people don't do a really great job on rep sometimes and keeping rep updated and accurate. And the first thing that you're going to have to do if you are having issues with comparability is you're going to have to go back to rep and see what needs to get fixed. And there's only certain windows that you can make changes in the rep. It's kind of, the whole process is kind of tricky. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it's a big topic. But if you need to do comparability, it's time to start thinking about it and working on that. If you don't have any idea what comparability is, you probably don't have to do it, and you can just be happy about that. Did want to talk about Title I plans here briefly. Title I plans have been required for a long time, and they used to be an assist. And then when we moved to MyKIP and moved away from assist, there was kind of a paper version that we needed to maintain. They were just supposed to be maintained at the district, but when it came time to do program audits or fiscal reviews, a lot of districts were missing those. And so now it is required in your consolidated application to attach all of your Title I plans for all of your Title I buildings. So Title I plans are at the building level, and they do include things like your parental involvement plan, your compacts. So there's a lot that goes into those Title I plans. And what I've been seeing lately is a lot of times, if we've previously skipped schools, now we need to upload Title I plans, even for our skipped schools that are not Title I buildings. So make sure that you are prepared to have all those attached by the time we submit our amendments. That will be the time that the consultants are going to check to make sure that we have plans for all of our Title I buildings and any skipped schools. So kind of the new-ish part of this is the skipped schools part. I think people were doing pretty good on getting their Title I plans for the Title I buildings ready, but we did get definitive communication that we needed for all of our skipped schools as well. So you do have some time to work on that before, if you don't have that for your skipped schools. Want to talk real briefly about private school requirements. We don't have to really start worrying about communicating with the private schools and those sorts of things for next year until February. But right now, the reason I'm bringing this up for our meeting is that the window is open or opening for them to do their reporting that they need to do to be eligible to get access to their federal funds. So I highly recommend that if you work with private schools, that you copy this message, maybe just copy this section of it and shoot them an email and just say, hey, are you all set with all of your reporting requirements? So I sent this out to my private schools. I work with a lot of private schools because I run a consortium in Muskegon and Ottawa counties. So I work with all of the private schools in 2 counties. And so I sent this message out to them earlier this week to remind them about their requirements. And the private schools replied and said that one of the timelines has been kicked back a little bit. So usually something's open now and it's due here at the end of the month, but that got extended out to the 15th, November 15th. So anyway, if you do work with private schools, take a quick read through this. These aren't any reporting requirements that you need to do, but it would be helpful for you to communicate that with your private schools. They should know about it. But I have had several of my private schools in the past have missed the deadline, and it's always a big rigmarole to get them to go back and try to get them access to it and that sort of thing. So that's it for private schools for right now. Actually, I will say one more thing about private schools. That's the amendment time. You do need to consult with your private schools if you are working in the private schools and you have an agreement with them. You do need to go back and get their signature at amendment time because you are supposed to consult with them, not just at the original consolidated application, but also at amendment time. So just keep that in mind. Amendment time is another consultation and another signature on the consultation document. Okay, so I want to pause there and just check in with Michelle first. Anything that I missed, and then any questions about any of the federal things that we went over or anything that we didn't go over. So check in with Michelle first to see if there's anything we missed.
No, sounds great, David. Thank you.
Great. Anything that from anyone else in the group that either I missed or that you have questions about that we might be able to ask the group about? So is anything about Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, any of the other title grants, consolidated application, written processes, on-site reviews? Any questions about any of those things? All right. I'll move on to the state part. If anything comes up, we will have time at roundtable to talk about anything. All right, getting into some of our state grants. Start off to talk a little bit about 31AA. So this is access for mental health supports for students. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this because there was kind of some confusing things went on with this. There's an opt-in for these funds. It's a pretty simple form. It's in GEMS. And you need to access GEMS through my login. So you'll log into my login and you can access GEMS from my login. And then once you get there, you'll be able to find this under the public responses. It'll say 31A funding application FY25. So you're going to want to do that before November 1st if you have not already done so. So I would put this real high on your priority list. The reason that this is a little confusing is in PA 120, there was a significant cut to 31AA this year. So it went from in the hundreds of millions of dollars down to 25 million. That's 25 million. And so a lot of people have been investing in mental health supports for students, and that cut was going to have some pretty dire implications on staffing across the state. So there was a lot of outcry from constituents to the state legislature, and a supplemental was pushed through. So a supplemental bill to PA 120 that increased the amount by 125 million. So this year in 31AA, we are going to get, as a state, 150 million. And so the confusing part about it is that in PA 120, there's just that 25 million. Then in the supplemental, there's an additional 125 million. And so when they did the supplemental, they didn't immediately give us access to that 125 million. We pretty much have immediate access to the 25 million, but not to the 125 million. And so Superintendent Rice put out a statement. I put it here, but I'll paraphrase. Thank you for the additional money. Why didn't you just give it to us all at once? And so the main thing that I want everybody to know is all of these funds, the obligation date or the start, go back to the start date for the grant, which is October 1st. So even if we don't get the 125 million until later, you can keep staff in place or put staff in place for that. You'll be able to spend those dollars all the way back to October 1st. And even though there are 2 funding periods, which means we have access to that 25 million now and 125 million later, there's still just one opt-in opportunity, and that's the one that's due November 1st in GEMS. So long story short, I just want to give you a little background in case people were asking about this or you were confused about it. There's this one opt-in opportunity. You need to get that application done by November 1st. And in doing so, you'll have access to all of the funds. So I hope I said that correctly. I hope that it was understandable. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on to the next item?
David, I have a question. So if I'm understanding you correctly, when that second pot of money becomes available, we'll receive a new memo telling us what the new per pupil allotment will be for that second part. Or will it still be the same as that 1760 or?
Yeah, so basically they're gonna, the per pupil amount, or the calculation method for it, I think is likely gonna change. Um, why don't I, if you could put that question in the chat, I can run it past the
Sure.
30AA team. I want to make sure, I don't want to give misinformation on it, um, but yeah, pretty much, some additional information is going to come out about the exact dollar amounts and things like that. But if you
Perfect,
could put
thank
that
you.
exact question in the chat, I'll make sure to run it past
Okay,
that 30AA team, and then I can
sure.
email out about that afterward.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. All right, just gonna move on to the 35A. So part 5 of 35A, so 35A is the read by grade 3 law. And so part 5 is that additional instructional time grant. So this is a grant that has been around since the read by grade 3 law came out. So that's all the way back to the 2016 year, I believe. And that is based on how many first graders you have enrolled in the district. And just wanted to point out that this application is in Nexus. So the 31AA is in GEMS, 35A5 is in Nexus. So this is the thing about state grants. There's multiple ways that we have to apply for those. Just wanted to point out that that application closes on November 4th. Also, if you're new into your position, there is reporting that is due at the end of the year about 35A5. So you're actually able to spend those funds for kindergarten up through 5th grade, even though it's part of the read by grade 3 law. And you do need to report what students access that and what kind of services you provided. So if you take those funds, there is additional reporting that's due in the last count period, which is the end of your collection. So just keep that in mind. If you are applying for those funds, you will have to report about it. So I want to talk a little bit about 104H. So this is the reimbursement for benchmark assessments. This was kind of a big to-do during COVID. It was tied to something called 98B. And because there was no state assessment given during COVID, the legislature basically said, well, you still need to be accountable to your communities. So you need to give all of your students benchmark assessments, and you need to set goals on those benchmark assessments, and you need to report results to your community by posting plans and your assessment results on your web pages. So this was all really confusing. They funded the benchmark assessments through 104H, and then all of the requirements about reporting to your community and those sorts of things were in 98B. Once the accountability system came back online, we started doing the state assessments again, 98B went away. So all those requirements about setting goals based on your benchmark assessments, reporting them, putting them on your web pages, all of that went away. And this is the second year that we have not had to do that. So I just bring all of that up because I still do get questions. I had a graphic that kind of explained all of this, and I still get questions about that graphic. They're like, are you going to update the graphic? And it's like, well, really all this is a reimbursement for your benchmark assessments. So, and there's good full details from MDE on that. So I'm not going to update that graphic because really that was trying to explain the interaction of 98B and 104H. So the bottom line here on the 104H is if you give those approved assessments, K8 in your district, and those approved assessments are iReady, NWEA, and STAR. If you give one of those 3 assessments, then they will reimburse you a dollar amount based on your K8 enrollment. So one of the caveats is if you want to take that money, you need to give your assessment results to MDE. And the way that you do that is through the Data Hub. Again, this is a little beyond the scope of our meeting today, but there are full details in this document here from MDE. One thing that I'm just going to point out in here that might be a good idea for you is, let me get this blown up a little bit. They do have the contact information in here for the vendors. And if you are not positive that you are connected correctly to the data hub and that your data is flowing, if you're not positive that that's happening, just send an email to your to the vendor here. So if you give iReady, it's Vicky or Jeff. If you give NWA, it's Faye. If you give Star, it's Sarah. So send those folks an email and just say, hey, just double checking, am I all set? They've been pretty good communicators, so they may have already communicated with you and all those sorts of things. If you were set before, you're probably still set. So there's nothing really new about it. But if you're not totally confident about that, I recommend just shooting them a quick email and checking in to make sure that you're all set. Other than that, the application is fairly painless. It is not open yet. It will open in November at some point. There has not been a date communicated about that. And that application to apply for that reimbursement is going to be in Nexus. So I really recommend taking a look at the full details for that if you're new to this. If you've done this for the last 4 years that it's been available, it's all set. Just give your assessments, make sure you get in and apply for that when it comes out. And then you should be all set. So I just had one other item in this section before we get into the roundtable, and that is just to talk about school accountability. We should be getting our new accountability data here in the next few weeks. And I want to show you where that comes up. So if you go to my school data, and then go to K-12 and then school accountability, you will see here is the school index. We will no longer be getting school grades. There were kind of two parallel systems, and luckily the legislature discontinued the school grades. So we're not going to get new grades this year. So school index is the spot that you're going to go for accountability. And the school index is based on the
Missourians,
school
who would have been
level.
great choices to celebrate and inspire.
So it is based at the school level, so you can't look up your district. Well, you can look up your district, but you would then have to select a school. So I'm just going to go to my old district. I think John's here. John, we're looking at Whitehall. So if you just go to any of the schools, then it's going to give you your it'll give you your accountability status here. Right now you can see that we only see 22, 23. In the next few weeks that'll change to 23, 24. And then you'll be able to see if there's any changes. The only change that is possible this year is to get new TSI identifications. So that it'll tell up here. So you can be identified as none or universal supports like this school, or you could be CSI, ATS, or TSI. And the only new designation that can happen this year is TSI. If you are a CSI school, you're still a CSI school. If you're an ATS school, you're still an ATS school until those until the new identification years for those. So next year is going to be a new identification year for CSI, and then 2028 is the next time that ATS is going to be identified. So just wanted to say that that's going to be coming out. You will have a preview window. And so keep your eye on the spotlight. The spotlight is usually where this gets communicated. You'll have a preview window for, it's usually a week or 10 days that you'll be able to get in and understand what your designation is. There is no appeal to it. So you can't say, well, I don't think we're TSI. Those numbers aren't right. There's no appeal. The appeal comes at all of the windows to appeal everything else. So you have times where you can go in and you can look at your state assessment scores and you can get anything fixed that's wrong there. You have times that you can go in and fix anything in the rep, which will impact your school quality and student success. You have times when you can go in and look at anything in your count days, which is going to count for a lot of these other pieces. So there's windows to appeal or look at all of the different sections of this throughout the year. But once you get your identification, there's no appeal. So you really have to pay attention to all those little things that come across each year. Stay in really good contact with your pupil accounting person, stay in really good contact with your state assessment person, stay in really good contact with your person that does the rep. All of those things are really important, and watching really closely at all of those different review periods and appeal periods is imperative. So make sure you're, I forgot to mention the GAD person, your graduation dropout person. Make sure you're really on top of all of those things that are coming through. And a lot of times that's not one person, it's many people across the district. So being in good communication about all that is important because when the designations come out, there's no appeal. So if you are kind of new to this or you want more information, there's a big playlist here that I made for the state a few years ago. It's still applicable. And then if you want to know what any of the designations are and how people get identified for those, what the requirements are and what the supports are, there's details on each of the different school accountability designations. All right, that was everything that I had at the state level. So before we move into roundtable, just wanted to see if anyone had any questions about any of the items that we went over. If there was anything that did not get covered that anybody had any questions about that hopefully the group can help with.
David, I have one for you. Earlier you talked about private schools. Are parochial schools lumped in with private schools?
Yeah. Yep. So yep. So any they're usually parochial schools. There are some non-religious private schools out there as well. But typically they're religious schools. Yep. Any other questions?
know if-
Anything so far? Go ahead.
David, do we know if all schools who would be receiving a programmatic audit for the state of Michigan have been notified?
Yes, for an on-site review from the Office of Educational Supports.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So there are other kinds of audits. So there's 31A audits, there's English learner audits, there's fiscal audits. Those ones I can't speak to. So they may be on some different timelines, but I did hear from Shelley Patton, who is the acting manager for Office of Education Supports, that on-site reviews have all been communicated.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Amber. Stephanie, Amber just posted that doc in. Any other questions about state stuff or anything that we talked about so far today? Okay, wanted to get into roundtable. Are there any hot topics that anybody has? Anything that they have questions about that they would like to pose to the group? Or anybody have some good resources maybe that they've created recently that they would like to share?
Hi, Dave. This is Stacy at Montague.
Hi, Stacy.
I just have a few tips for everybody here at the meeting. The first is I'm not a big fan of GEMS and MARS. When you do submit things, they disappear into the abyss of GEMS and MARS. So it's my recommendation that before you hit that submit button, that you make a copy, that you print out whatever your application says. And it doesn't print really nice. So what I tend to do is use the snipping tool and put it into Word. So that's just a helpful tip, because otherwise you have to call customer service in order to access your application if you ever want to see it again. And then the second thing is we're in the count period, and you may want to check in with your pupil accountants and check to see what's in their count file for free and reduced lunch. On October 1st, everybody who was free and reduced last year expires if they don't fill out a new form. And so when we looked at our count file, we have 198 kids in our current count file who are full pay, but they were free last year. So right now we've got our food service doing some research on that, trying to get people to fill out forms, because we can update that free and reduced status up to November 13th, which is the final certification. And that doesn't impact your federal funds for next year. So that may be something to touch base with your pupil accountant about.
Stacy,
Those are my.
Stacy, can I jump in real quick about that?
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so thank you so much for bringing up the food service and getting on top of those student counts. With universal free breakfast, lunch, community eligibility, all those sorts of things. Many districts aren't staying on top of also getting forms completed. And that while that doesn't necessarily impact your Title I funding, because that's based on census poverty, we can talk about that at a future meeting. It for sure impacts your 31A funding, which is based on your free and reduced lunch count. So not only will it have impact on federal funds for nutrition programs, but it will have a direct impact on your 31A as well. So please follow Stacy's advice there. Stay on top of your of getting those forms in. And like she mentioned, the count day is done, but the count period is still open. So you can still make a change for that now.
Stacy, you threw out 2 dates, October 31st and November 13th. Which is the date?
Oh, so I'm sorry, I said on October 1st, those that were free and reduced last year, their application expires. So as of October 1st, if they were free and reduced last year, it's expired if they did not fill out a new form this year. November 13th is the final date that we can certify our count file in MSDS.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Great tips.
David, can I add something about GEMS Mars?
Yes.
GEMS Mars is not like Nexus. So GEMS Mars is like the MDE's file cabinet. So great tip by Stacy to take snips or Snagits or pictures, because it's not an active system like Nexus is. So it's just our file cabinet, and that's where we store documents. So I think taking a photo, taking a picture, snippet, Snagit's great advice. Thank you for that, Stacy.
All right, so we had a couple of tips shared there. Anybody else have anything, maybe any resources that you've created that are helpful, or any questions that have kind of been nagging you that you haven't been able to get answered? We have a good group here today. I'm sure that we'll be able to get any questions answered.
Hi, David. This is Brian Depker from DeWitt Schools.
Hi, Brian.
I hope this is okay. I just to follow up on the ed benefits and the free and reduced lunch forms. We did experience that last year with the universal free lunch. Or I think our count dropped about 100 and we took a big hit in 31A. So I don't know, do people have good strategies? We've struggled to get people to fill out those forms. Just curious, and hope, and if this isn't appropriate for this group, let me know, but do people have good strategies within their systems to get people to fill those out, even though the primary benefit is already accounted for in the statewide free lunch?
No, this is for sure the forum to ask about that, Brian. So Brian put a good question out to the group. Anybody that experienced the same thing, that anybody have a good system that they put in place? We'd love to hear from a couple of different districts.
If I can, I'm Diana from Beecher Community School District. We tie it into our Title I events and usually have a building-wide large presentation in fall and just pull out those forms. And unfortunately, we almost have to incentivize our parents where they do our Title I evaluations, the parent-teacher compacts, and this is wrapped in there. And when they get their hole punches on a card, then their name goes into a raffle. And we usually try to have some big ticket items that are general fund bought, but they're items that'll help them. We've had laundry baskets with soap and just household items that will take something off their plate.
That punch card idea is so awesome. I love that. I'm gonna steal that and share that at my next parental involvement meeting.
It is helpful. Thank you.
Other ideas? How have folks dealt with this as you moved to either community eligibility or universal free breakfast and lunch? How have you kept on top of getting the families to fill those forms out? Would love to hear from a couple more districts.
Hey, Dave, Simeon Prang here, Reese Puffer Schools, longtime listener, first time caller.
I don't think this is your first time calling in.
Well, it is today, so yeah. No, we've included the online Meal Magic sign up as part of our online registration process. And so this was the first year we did that, and we saw a marked improvement in the completion rate for folks. So that's just something that I guess every fall when parents update their Power School information, that's something that's in there as well for them to do. So that's how we've sort of handled it.
So it's basically part of your annual paperwork that everybody has to fill out. It's just everybody also has to fill out the free reduced lunch form.
Yeah, I think we've, as a district, kind of conditioned our parents to expect that they're going to be doing paperwork when school starts up. And so we've just kind of slid that one in there, and we haven't had a lot of pushback on it.
Got it. Looks like Dana had her hand up.
Hi there. My name is Dina Tallis.
Oh, sorry, Dina. Dina.
I'll answer to anything that starts with a D. I'm with Imlay City Schools, and we historically get a great turnout during our back to school open houses. So we have representatives from our food service set up a table at each building, and that way they can answer parent questions about why the form needs to be completed and so forth. And when they fill it out and turn it in during open house, their name gets entered into a drawing. And we have 4 main buildings, and we give away 4 $100 gift cards to our to the Kroger here that's local to us. So we sort of incentivize it in that way and take advantage of our well-attended open house where the majority of our families will be at some point during that week before school starts.
Awesome. Thanks, Dina.
Those are great ideas. Thanks. I'm a long time, first time as well, David. So thanks for all your work.
You got it. Yeah, so great ideas there. If anybody else has any other ones, you're welcome to drop them in chat. Anything else for roundtable?
Yeah,
right.
David,
Go
related
ahead,
to
Chris.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Chris.
Related to the discussion about the TSI, is there any other way to see the schools that are identified besides going in through My School Data and just kind of looking at each school?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember if there's like a list that's put out. I seem to remember seeing one. I don't have it at the tip of my, like right at my fingertips. Does anybody else know the answer to that one? I know that when they, during the window where the preview window, like I literally have to go in the past, I've gone in and looked at every single school in my entire county because there wasn't also a different list that was put out. I think maybe later they come out, or maybe it's just a CSI list. Anybody else know the answer to that question? I know that during the window, I go in and I open every individual thing and look at every single school.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid is that.
Yeah. Amanda, who's also at the ISD level, said that she does the same thing. She has to go in and look in the system.
Dave, when I Googled it here, there's a 2022 list online. Is that the most recent list, or would there be a 2023 list?
Yeah, the 2023 is the most recent, and yeah, I know that they come out. Do they have all the designations there, or is it just the CSI schools? Because I've seen the CSI list before.
It's the TSI.
Oh, they have a TSI list. Okay, yeah. Yeah, my guess would be, Chris, for sure during the preview window, there won't be any lists published because they don't want those going public. They want everybody to look internally. So for sure not during the preview window, and then question mark / maybe after the preview window is done.
Hi, Dave, it's Lisa Pattison.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, so yes, there is a TSI list that's posted that has all the TSI schools for 2023. I'll put the link in the chat, so it does just pull those right out. I'm not sure when It was updated on November 29th of 2023. So
Okay.
it's a quick place to go to look. It shows the district, the school, what subgroup was identified for TSI, as
Perfect.
well as the ISD, if it's charter or not, and who their management company is.
Awesome. Yeah,
So
if
I'll
you
put
could drop
that
that in the
chat.
chat, I'll paste it in there. So if that was put out on the 29th, that was after the preview window closed. So so yeah, it sounds like they'll probably post that again. Do you know where that was posted, Lisa, or was it emailed out? Is it on a web page? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, muted. It was on MDE's website.
Like the accountability page, or
Let's see. I just have the link here. I Googled it. So just give me a second.
sure. Yeah, just I'm be nice to have a space to like go and look for that. But to Chris's point, it won't be out during the preview window when we would like it to be out.
When is that preview window again?
So they don't have the date yet. It is probably going to be in the next 2 weeks, I would guess. It's usually out at the end of October or the first week of November. And the preview window is typically communicated in the Spotlight. All right. Last call for roundtable.
Hi, my name is Dana Riley. I'm from Crawford DeSable Schools. Thanks for letting me jump in.
Absolutely.
I'd like to pick your brain. So we have a GSRP, and this is in relation to the transportation funding and the reporting that we have to do. So we have GSRP that's not under our LEA. They basically rent space in our school. They're like a community based. We do receive GSRP funding for transportation from them. And then I had reached out to Mac Dashney about these GSRP kids and how they're supposed to be reported on the 4159, or are they considered non-public on the non-public form? And it sounds like they would be considered non-public and that we're required to transport them free of charge. And we would put them on the 4159, but then we'd be essentially double dipping, getting transportation funds from both areas. So
Right.
yeah, so our early childhood coordinator, she's researching it, but I just wondered if anybody else had any ideas on that.
Ooh, good one for the group. Who else is dealing with GSRP and transportation and reporting around all of that? That one's definitely outside of my wheelhouse, so hopefully somebody else here has got something for you.
I think it all comes back to that 22L transportation funding that we get through the state aid, but they want the bus logs through pupil count week, and where do we put these kids and how does that come back to the funding? So I just wondered if anybody had any ideas.
Yeah, any ideas out there from anybody?
I'll keep researching and let you know.
sounds like you guys are on the right track for getting that figured out. And you've contacted the right people for that. But yeah, it doesn't sound like anybody else in the group has the same situation going.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. Simeon just put a question in about the dyslexia law and interplay with some of the existing funding that we're getting for literacy supports. Anybody else, and anybody that's like really has a deep knowledge of the dyslexia law and might be able to weigh in on some of the items that he has there, some of the funding sources? Barring any specific expertise here, does anybody that they might know or a contact at MDE that might be a good one to bounce that question off? I'm not even sure who we might ask that question of. Got it, Amber, thanks.
I can, Dave, I don't have any real expertise. I can just tell you what I've been hearing with the
Sure,
dyslexia
yeah,
piece
go
and
for it.
the grants. It's not explicitly, there's no funding explicitly written in right now, but with having a couple of years before it really takes effect, there's speculation that it may be rolled into the 35A grant funds, whether it's a shift in funds or an addition of funds. That wasn't really clear. I know that my MTSS is putting together a dyslexia symposium in January. The details haven't been released yet, but it'll be virtual. So I'd say, you know, probably look at the My MTSS Technical Assistance Center to see when more information is going to come out about that.
So I caught the piece about My MTSS putting together symposium after the first of the year. I think you mentioned something else that I might have missed.
I think just the speculation is that funding to support the dyslexia law is going to potentially come through 35A, but that's just speculation right now.
Got it.
Thank you. Part of my curiosity is our screener we use, FastBridge, at least in our district, isn't on the approved list. And so trying to think through a timeline if we do make a switch of what that, or are required to make a switch, what that might entail with the approved materials and approved assessments.
All right, couple things there, Simeon. TBD. Amber, thanks for dropping those couple of resources in the chat. I got those put into the agenda. All right. I think I said last call for roundtable, so I'll say really last call for roundtable. Some good stuff today. Good questions. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording and wrap the meeting up. I will stick around for a few minutes if anybody has anything specific that they wanted to talk about. Not that I know everything in the world, but I'll stick around and help out as much as I can.